So I was up at the front of the cash. It was around Christmas time, so a huge line of people, just waiting and kind of staring at you, while the line is moving. And a woman came in to do a return on a book, and she had this book that they're kind of popular with kids and like young adults, where it's sort of like a would you rather situation. So this page is would you rather eat a bug, and this page is like, I don't know, eat a booger or just something really stupid like that. But the book was destroyed. Like some kid like had a time with this book. Like the binding was all falling apart, pages were falling off. And so I said, you know what, I'm really sorry, but this book has been like enjoyed, and like I can't give you money back for this because I can't send it back to the publisher like this. I can't resell it. Like there's nothing that I can do. And I kind of gently like slid the book back on the table, and she just kind of looked at me, oh, but I'd really like to return this book though. And she just kind of like slid it right back. I kind of politely slid it back over. I said, I know, I'm so sorry. I was being really polite. And the line is huge, and everyone's just looking at me like, what is this situation? He grabs the book and is just staring at me with like the angriest eyes, and grabs the book and starts to try to tear the book in half, trying to rip it in half while just staring right at me the whole time, unblinking. And I don't know if you've ever tried to rip a book in half, but it's actually not very easy. And so she's not succeeding in ripping this off, and she's like getting all red in the face and like still trying. And I kind of just said, ma'am, you are entirely rip your own book in half. And she threw it at me. And I kind of like, I dodged it, and she stormed off, and everyone in the line is just looking at me like, what the hell just happened? And for some reason, she was just having a really bad day, and she got confused thinking that like I wasn't going to return the book for her, but I was going to keep it. And so she was going to rip it in half to prevent me from doing that. And yeah, she called back later and was like really apologetic.
Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Ellie Blue, the Vice President of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
This week, we welcome special guest Paul McKay of King's Co-op Bookstore in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and for our continuing bookstore solidarity project. First of all, Paul, what is it that makes your store special and different, other than our Amazon display contest award that does make you special?
I was so happy to enter that and to win that. I won't lie about that. Yeah, our store is very odd for a couple reasons. So we're a campus bookstore for one, but we're also an independent bookstore for the community. And a lot of people kind of find that hard to understand, that you picture like a university bookstore and it's just wall-to-wall sweaters and $300 textbooks. And that is not what we are at all. So that's the first thing. And then the strangest thing I think about us is that we are sort of a pop-up shop every day. So the university didn't have a bookstore for the longest time, and students got together and decided like we need to have our own bookstore for any number of reasons. They were having a hard time finding the books they needed, or other places weren't able to do it properly for them. So we operate in essentially a found space on campus, which is a corner and two sort of glorified hallways. And so our bookshelves kind of close in on themselves and lock so that the hallway portions still function, but the books are taken care of. And then everything else is on wheels that goes behind one of those kind of giant, gates that you always see in stores. So I think in the text interview I did with you guys, I sent a little video of a high speed me kind of like running back and forth doing it every day. And it's been tricky to sort of, use the space in the smartest ways and do the most with the least. Sometimes I'll see bookstores open up and like, we've got this beautiful new like rich mahogany shelves and chandeliers and this and that. That looks great on Instagram, but we're kind of doing as much as we can with the least that we can, I guess. We're also hard to find too, so I've just kind of leaned into that.
Well, it's fun and fantastic. What made you personally go into this line of work?
Yeah, I feel like usually people are like, well, I've always loved books and I've always wanted to work in a bookstore. And that was like not my plan at all. So I high school was like okay, but it was never my happiest or strongest time. But then I got into university. I majored in psychology for like a possible career, and music. I got a double major in psychology and music, and that was my like passion thing that I wanted to do that. And then after that, I went to school for jazz guitar training, and that was my hope was I was going to be a music professor and jazz performer. You know where the money is in.
Yeah.
And
And
then when you retired with a mountain of money, you went into bookselling?
Yeah, exactly. So while I was doing that, I get kind of obsessive when I do something. So like I would get up around 8 in the morning and I would practice the guitar until like 10 at night, and then I would do that every day. And then my body was like, "You're an idiot. Where this thing is not designed to do this." So my arm kind of gave out on me with sort of repetitive strain injury, and so that was kind of a tough pill to swallow at the time. And I ended up back and getting a job at a like a big Canadian chain bookstore that most people would recognize. And I was shelving books with one hand while I kind of calmed the. And through that, I always liked reading when I was younger, and as a teenager, I kind of fell out of it for a while when all I was doing was that guitar stuff. But I kind of got back into it by meeting a lot of great people while I was working there that kind of got me into like real great literature and how like life changing it can be. And so it just kind of started. I was there part time, and then I got full time, and then to management, and then I moved down here to Halifax with the same chain. And then the King's Co-op Bookstore needed a new manager, and I jumped at the chance to do something more independent, more in charge of everything, sort of. Yeah, it was a very not straight path to this career, but I feel like it's kind of a benefit because I don't come with kind of preconceived notions about what a bookstore should be or do or anything like do whatever I want. And
Like make a display that involves a bottle of pee.
yeah, I was when I was making that, I was like, is this too far or is it not far enough? I remember driving to work with my wife. I was like, I got to go to Irving, the gas station. I got to buy a bottle of apple juice to use as urine. She's like, what are you talking about?
It's a work thing.
Bookseller. But yeah, you guys announced that contest. Like I was like immediate. Like I know exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm going to put all that kind of stuff in. And I was thrilled to win that. And I sold so many copies of it, and then I just went around the city, just like leaving copies places, just guerrilla. It was like one of the funnest times.
Love that.
That's awesome. We used to have a similar bookstore arrangement where we had like shelves on casters, and then they would fold into a wall, and then they would lock in the same way. And then we had like a telescoping wall that would like open and close. So I really love that you're still maintaining this. This is like such a, because I felt like when we moved into our building now, our bookstore is like literally like it's a square room. And the staff, when we moved, they were like, I just feel like we don't show off our character in the right way here. And so I'm glad that because I think that says a lot about like a store and like how much ingenuity you have and like where you're coming from as on a different kind of mechanical level. But can you talk more about like what your day-to-day role is and what makes for the most fun days?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of do just about everything in the store. So I'll come in and open up. I do all the bookkeeping, and I'll do the book selling. I do the ordering of what's going to come in and what's not. So there's not a single book in the store that I haven't kind of personally looked at and thought that's a good thing to have here. I have usually student staff is kind of the mandate of the co-op. So it's for students and by students. So I manage it, and most of our employees are students. So they'll come in between classes, kind of come and go with their schedule, which can be kind of tricky if their schedule's okay. Well, I have a class here and one here, but I can come in for this kind of slight period here. So it can be a little bit tricky for that. And we have a pretty good online presence, both like through social media and just our website. So a lot of online orders come through, and then I'll try to think of some, interesting things to put up on social media. So yeah, nothing too sexy and extravagant in like a typical sort of day, but just always trying to think of something interesting to do. to bring people into the store. The sort of my favorite days for sure are usually kind of the back to school periods. So we have September is absolute madness for us because for the course books, King's has the foundation year program, which is one of the kind of, they call them the great books programs, where you kind of learn, like start at the earliest books possible and you just read like 50 books in the year. So when students come in for that, I'm handing over huge boxes of like 50 books at a time, times like around 200 students. So with our tiny little bookstore is just full of people. We're just like making it rain, books everywhere. Like we make a large portion of our yearly income in that like 1 week period. And
Do
the
you
first
need to put boxes on their own rolling cart?
Yeah, do they have casters and
Or do they go into like a disappearing, like one of those holes to doors to another dimension?
oh yeah.
we have a storage room now, which is nice, so I can make these boxes up in advance and put them in there until the time comes. But it used to be me just like I'm quite skinny, so I would just like box like against the wall, and I would just slide through as summer progressed. I got more and more of those boxes. But the first book they always read is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of the oldest books, ever. And seeing all the students come in and like 200 people like all reading the same book, like sitting under a tree on the quad, or they're at a coffee shop, or they're on their porch, and I'm always just seeing these people all like interacting with the same amazing book that, even though it's that old, like it's relevant and it's really cool to read, and just to see that excitement is easily my favorite kind of time, despite limping home after every day of doing that sort of thing.
Oh, that's rad though.
So sort of a sorry, gear shift. So our podcast is ostensibly geared at publishers. I know a lot of other people watch it too, but what advice do you have for publishers? Like, what do you wish more publishers understood about bookstores and the needs of bookstores?
Or like, what are they getting wrong?
Yeah, what are we doing
If
wrong?
you want to go negative.
Yeah. I think my biggest complaint with some publishers is that they don't really realize how different certain bookstores can be, because we're very unique in our place and our kind of ethos, and like you guys as a publisher are very specific. Like you do your thing and you do it well, and you kind of get that other places kind of do the same sort of thing. Where publishers will come out with their like, okay, this is our spring list, so I'm going to send you this, and if you buy one $80 Vietnamese cookbook, make it this one. Like, okay, but I'm
You're like, what about zero? I was planning on zero.
Yeah, which one would the college students want the most?
they're sitting up to me like, yes, waiting for you to be like, oh yes, give me 10 of those. But like, I'm student centered, literature bookstore. Like, you're wasting my time and your time with that. And there are like some publishing reps, even for the same publishing company, some reps kind of get it more than others. So like I've had a few that like, I know exactly what you're looking for. I'm going to keep it. I'll be like, thank you. Now I could just, 10, 10, 10, let's go. That's what I want. So every bookstore that like I particularly like has like an ethos, or like it's got its own kind of personality, particularly in the States. Like there's a lot of great bookstores down there that I really kind of relate to, and we try to have sort of an image like that I would love it if more publishers kind of had that awareness and came at us with that sort of energy. Outside of that, like publishers often do sort of like promos, like if you buy 30 books of this, we'll give you an extra 2% on this, but like that doesn't do a lot for me, to be honest. Now I've got to order all these books and find a place for them, and like 2% over how long it's going to take me to sell those books is not really worth the effort to me.
Yeah.
Hear that.
Makes sense. And yeah, and I think, right, like I do think a lot of those kinds of decisions are made in absentia, or like it oftentimes it makes me feel like the publishers have never like set foot in a bookstore based on what they're producing and how they're talking about it. But neither here nor there. So
I think that like sort of stores have sort of changed over the years too, like kind of what they're doing and like how they're operating. And I do think some of these are like holdovers from like, this is how it used to be done, so we're just going to keep doing it this way. There are some that are kind of getting kind of coming along, kind of thinking of some new interesting things to do. And I really appreciate that, but I would love to see more of that. During the pandemic, for instance, Penguin gave me the keys to their Instagram account one day for like an
Nice.
over. Like I had access to all of their followers and just kind of had a lot of fun that day where, I'd ask me any questions. Let's go on a book delivery because I was delivering books on my bike. So I had like a to like really that really helped like promote the bookstore to interesting people. It was a fun thing to do. So more things like that are kind of interesting that people like might care about, more than, okay, now I have 50 copies of this book and I'll make an extra 50 cents per, it's hard to sort of think of a way to have fun with that.
Right. So, but what are things that publishers think are important but don't actually matter other than discount? Well, discount matters, but like 2% additional discount.
Yeah, it's a tougher one to answer because I know the position that they're in is like they have to, have a limited amount of money and paper, for instance, and they have to get behind these huge books. So like same sort of thing where like, okay, Stephen King's got a new book, so like here, like get your orders in quick and we'll do this and we'll do that. Like again, that doesn't really do a lot for me personally in my bookstore. I find those types of things, one of the ways that we kind of have a personality in other bookstores do that is the things they carry, but also the things they don't carry. If my Instagram was every hot new title, like every time Stephen King puts out a book, I'm really like putting it up there. It just becomes like it's nothing better than Amazon at that point. It's just a list of stuff you could get.
Yeah.
So again, it kind of falls into that sort of curation and like bookstores being kind of more individuals. And I don't know what the answer to that kind of complaint is, to be honest. So I don't want to like drag publishers too hard. We're all
Free.
We need them and they need us, and it's far from a perfect system, and no one's getting rich for the most part. So it's an interesting sort of thing where it's a different sort of store relationship than like a clothing store. It's not like these are the new 2025 pants that we have that you are going to sell because you are our whatever. Like I have access to every single book ever made almost, and that's a very interesting sort of thing. A position to be in where one of the things that we do also that I think publishers should kind of think about a bit more is front list versus back list. Or if anyone doesn't know, like front list is the new hotness, to use an old phrase. And backlist is literally anything else. And backlist, like we sell a good amount of backlist titles. So just because something's new doesn't mean it's like really gonna do a whole lot. One of the ways that I try to keep people away from Amazon, for instance, is to have some of those new titles that people are going to want there. But if you want a copy of like a certain classic book that is not top of mind for everybody, like sometimes you don't have a choice other than to go to Amazon because no bookstores and publishers are devoting the space to what I like to kind of think of as, those books you should read in your life. You know what I mean? Like that tends to be kind of where I try to land with the stuff that's in the store. If it's like just a new book that like in 2 months no one's going to care about this book just because it had black printing on the paper, not to I try to steer away from that stuff, but there is value in every book that they put out, for the most part, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's very well taken. In terms of like book selling, what's the most important part to you?
Definitely, like it's probably the answer everyone would give, but it's just that sort of one-on-one kind of interaction. Like when someone comes in and particularly if they come in with nothing, like no agenda, and they just kind of start looking around, and I can rec or even if they just glance at one, and I'll be like, oh, I saw you looking at that one. Like let me tell you how good that is, and just being able to pass that excitement on to someone who then takes it home and then comes back and also has that same sort of enthusiasm for it. I'm always looking for kind of weird books that are not anyone's huge front list. There's no push. There's no viral TikTok campaign about this weird little thing. And if I can find those that like probably aren't available in other bookstores, for instance, find those, really kind of push those into the city and like as many people as I can get. And it can be frustrating when like I'm like a diehard for a certain book and it's just not like it's just not landing, whether it's like it's not as good a book as maybe I think it is, or like just the community here, it just doesn't fit with the vibe of who we have in the city, for instance.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. So what's an emerging trend that your customers want but isn't yet like being produced sufficiently?
That's a good question. I don't know that I really have a great answer for that because there's just so much with book selling and with what customers like. Sometimes customers don't even know what they want until they kind of come into the store and they find those sorts of things. Like people aren't really coming in with a complaint about something. The only complaint that I hear is like books are getting too expensive, like everything else. But yeah, I think one of the things sort of that would be beneficial to like publishers, booksellers, kind of anyone in this sort of industry is just ease of getting the product, like finding out about things, getting it in easy ways. So, as much as I slag on Amazon, like they do have a pretty great system for their website, for instance. Like if you want to go on there and order something, you can have it very quickly. It's a very easy website to use. I'll often use it to like find information myself that I will then plug into my website because it's such a great search engine, for instance. So I like to call it reverse showrooming, where people look it up on Amazon and then buy it from us. Like I encourage that a lot. So like improved like social media use to like get stuff out there, improved delivery service to people who can't kind of make it into the store. So that's one thing that I've really leaned into is like if you live in the city, it's not a huge city. If you need a book dropped off, just let me know. Sometimes if you're far enough away, we'll charge a couple bucks. If not, if it's on my way home, I don't care. I'll just drop it off. So a lot of people kind of get married to that idea of, oh, it's a bookstore, so I need to go and like run my fingers across the spines and get on the ladder with the wheels and have a lot of that kind of stuff and spend hours pouring the sacks, which is great. But like not everyone does care about that. A lot of people don't have the time or they just don't care. They want to get on the website, find the book, order the book, have it brought to their house so they can spend the time reading the book that they want anyway. So I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer that just kind of like make things as easily accessible to people as possible, as much as we can.
Right. Yeah, like the culture of an independent store is just so different than a chain.
Yeah.
And the expectations of the customer and the like even the motivations for like patronizing a store like yours are just going to be it's a total 180. And I loved the photos that you sent on our blog, which anybody that hasn't should be looking at our blog to check that out because it is a great interview but like it really shows the character of like your personality of your store. Is that like something that you were intentional in cultivating, or are you just like honestly being who you are?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. Like I am kind of just being who I am. And like that has been resonating with people. People have been liking that. So I kind of just lean into it. Like there was a time a few years ago that I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to be as weird as I want to be. And I'm whatever I want because I do whatever I would want to see like on a bookstore's Twitter account, for instance, or an Instagram account or whatever. And I don't see stuff that makes me laugh or makes me happy. But I try to just do that. And people kind of relate to it. So when I first was trying to, figure out what is the social media gonna be like for the store, I would go on Twitter and I'd be like, we have this new book here. Nothing, nobody cares, and there was a day where I was in my apartment that had really thin walls and someone was listening to an audiobook at full blast that was like a self-help book about like overcoming your like intimacy issues. And I was just laughing at the absurdity of it. And I went on Twitter and I was like, that feeling when your neighbor listens to an audiobook so loud it solved your own intimacy issues or something like that. And everyone laughed. And I got more comments and engagement and fun with that as opposed to anything I really talk about, like this hot new Stephen King book or whatever. So I kind of like, I'll just do stuff that makes me laugh or that I think is fun. Sometimes it like goes nowhere, but occasionally it'll like really get some engagement and people will like that. And I'll mix that in with like new book idea, or we're doing this in the community. And yeah, so it is me, but I do lean into it. Like I try to do something interesting with it, I guess. And yeah, people seem to relate to that a lot more, I will say.
That's fantastic.
Well, I am
Yeah.
happy kind of coming across that like there's a personality there, because it is just one person. It's not a team of people going on there thinking of what's going to get engagement and what isn't. Like, I think my most successful tweet was a picture I had found of have you seen the fish book tweet that I put up? It's an old Jewish scroll in the shape, like there's a silver fish that it's carved into, and you just pull the scroll out and it's beautiful, like it's incredible. And I just like, that rules. And I put it up on Twitter, like, which publisher will be brave enough to bring back the fish book? And I like just was a throwaway thought that I just put it up there, and that got like 1 million views and like shares and retweets for something so silly.
Wow.
And sometimes something that I think this is very clever. I'm a very clever individual, and this will get some other clever folks and like, but look, it looks like fish.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we found that too, that like posting earnestly, posting cutely, those are fine, but the shit posting is what really gets the views.
Yeah.
And engagement.
We like had an appreciation fan post, and we were like, and today we're going to show you who our biggest fan is. And then it was a photo of a fan in our warehouse, and people loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it. It's like the dumbest joke. But I mean, it is a very large fan, to be clear.
I think it's a very sophisticated joke.
And then we did one the other day that was for April Fool's Day. We said that we had to lay off our entire AI staff and that replaced them with human beings, and people loved it. I mean, a few of our staff panicked a little bit until they like thought it through, but then it was like one of those things where you're like, I don't know, I guess that one's like topical. But
yeah. Well, I feel like we're kindred spirits on a number of levels. So thanks for loving our books and selling our books, and let us know if there's anything you think we should be publishing that your readers would want.
And I saw you guys are going to be selling Larry Law's stickers. Very and like love that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's been, I could not believe, because we sell lots of things like that, I could not believe how big the response was for Larry's stuff.
It's a funny tweet in material form. And
that was like a thing where like we were just impulsively meeting and we were like, hey, would you be into us reproducing your work? And he was like, yeah, I'd be into that. And it was like, it was that simple, And yeah, and then I sent him maybe made the mistake of sending him a follow-up email that was like, legal counsel possibly needed.
Right.
That's so he didn't see it for months until because I was like, he'll like do stuff where he'll like infringe upon copyright sometimes. Right. I was making a joke that we would need a lawyer to navigate.
Oh, got it.
But that one did not land. So not all the jokes.
Not all jokes. Well, do you have any parting words of wisdom for our audience? Just
keep supporting indie publishers and indie bookstores. There's really no reason not to. If you're used to the convenience of Amazon, I get it. But all you have to do is think one book ahead, or the next read at your indie bookstore. If they don't have it now, they'll have it by the time you're finished the last one. We're here for you guys. We're here for the community. The money goes back into your community. We don't make a ton of profit. Everything goes back into the bookstore or for events. So like any money that we make goes into bringing cool authors or cool events or anything like that. Or we're the people that when you need a donation for your local team or your local play or something, or a GoFundMe for something, we're the ones that will answer your emails. And Jeff Bezos is not coming with his gigantic wallet to help anybody.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
On Twitter at Microcosm.
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
On Instagram at Microcosm_pub.
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.